This is a hard and burdening truth, very disturbing truth that we have to face. Did we as Africans partake in any form in the enslavement of our people? Yes, we did. Some African leaders and groups participated. We can't only just cling to the glorious and beautiful part of our history. Yes, I know you'll say, but they do that. Yes, but we should not make bad values and characters be our yardstick of measurement. One thing that has to be very clear is European demand escalated the scale, amplified the scale of enslavement trade. And I deliberately use enslavement trade instead of slave trade because we should focus on the perpetrators. Enslavement is the act, what was done. They enslaved people. There were cultures, even in Europe, that had the ideology of slave. In German, some will say Leibeigene. Some people can own other people. The European involvement escalated it because there were conflicts within African empires. I remember researching for Custodians of the Record. There was the story about the Ida Wars, where the Oba marched into war with neighboring kingdoms. One thing I even noticed in that story, which I have seen now repeat itself in different histories, is European colonizers. They understood their ideology of divide them so you can conquer them. And this is something we have to take as lesson from that very disturbing part of history where we participated. When there were conflicts and people were fighting with less sophisticated weapons, when I mean less sophisticated weapons, I'm now comparing it to today. But for that time, the civilization that was sophisticated enough for the kind of conflicts they had. But have you ever heard about an African empire or country developing weapons of mass destruction? That is not in our nature. Actually, peace, trying to find resolution, storytelling, finding new ways of expressing our anger and conflict. That was how we dealt with stuff. The weapons used during those wars did not deliver enough captives. The Portuguese started their experiment, not just in transatlantic slavery. They started also in Sao Tome. They needed more labor. What did they do? They went to the Benin Empire and instigated more wars around the Benin Empire, saying, we will give you weapons, we will give you cannons and everything, because now we have these more sophisticated weapons of mass destruction. With that knowledge of, okay, we can defeat a war, people become more aggressive. So any peaceful approach of resolution becomes less attractive. That ideology of divide, we have to be wary about that because it's still happening today, making it about tribe, making it about religion. No. As we also reflect about our participation as perpetrators, let us reflect about our participation as people who fought against that enslavement trade. There were tribes and groups who fought against it, who were against it. They became on the other side. So now, external factors have successfully divided these regions into, are you going to trade with us and give us captives, create more wars? You will even see in history that around the Ida Wars, the 1 year where that war lasted, that was the 1 year where the price to buy a captive now fell. There were thousands of captives that now the Portuguese were happy to take to Sao Tome for their plantation. So you see, there's always an interest. To make that interest flourish, you have to divide people. You have to give them the idea of they are different from their neighbors. So they have to fight their neighbors so that you can infiltrate that space. Because strangers, it's very hard for strangers to come and capture you, take you away. It has to be people that are connected to you, that know you. And when we go beyond that participation, we can also then address modern day enslavement trade called human trafficking. It still happens. It's a reality. I spent over a decade in this field working and supporting women who were survivors of human trafficking. And most of the perpetrators that exploit them here are also from the same place these women come from. And the demand on the European side that fuels that human trafficking. Unfortunately, we don't talk enough about them. Hashtag Epstein files, right? You have this heavy demand of people that are exploitable, people that are vulnerable. For that to flourish, you have to go into the space and divide them so you can infiltrate and spoil the cultures. And that is what has happened. And it's very disturbing that it's even still happening today. So this is really something we have to address. Thank you for dropping this comment, because sometimes we really need to bring these things to our awareness, right? So that we can be cautious and embrace humility and reflect, unpack those heavy tensions and loads that has been engraved in our story. So thank you for dropping this comment. I am Joana. I uncover Africa's untold stories and help you heal through storytelling.